We've taken everything we've learned and more, and we've created the iPhone 3G. And it's beautiful.
Here they come down the track. Usain Bolt sprinting ahead, winning by daylight.
For me, it blows my mind that 10 years has gone by so fast. Since ESPN ranks the top 150 football recruits every year, I thought it would be an interesting idea to see what the top 10 players out of high school in 2008 have accomplished since then. Some of them are perennial Pro Bowlers, while some of the others you've probably never even heard of. So before we get into this list, I gotta thank SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. There is no better place to get tickets for cheap, and SeatGeek gathers tickets from all across the web into one area, making buying so easy. They rate these tickets on a scale of 1 to 100, with the higher the number, the better the deal. If you still haven't done it yet, use my promo code KTO at checkout for $20 off your next purchase. So now, let's dive into this video. Number 10. Coming out of Auburn, Alabama, D. Finley was looked at as possibly the most versatile defensive back in high school, with a host of SEC schools calling its name, and in dismay of Auburn fans, Finley signed with the Florida Gators over his hometown school. Florida was coming into their prime with Tim Tebow, and this team was only going to get better with D. Finley. Unfortunately, this never really materialized. When D. Finley arrived at Florida, they wanted him to put on some weight and make the change to linebacker. As a true freshman, he played very sparingly. His sophomore season, he ended up breaking his collarbone and missing the last half of the year. Following that, D. Finley was arrested for driving with a suspended license and was also charged with resisting arrest with violence. At this point, it had become apparent that being a reserve anyway, along with being suspended, he wasn't seeing the field anytime soon. And just a month after the incident, it was announced that D. Finley would be transferring from Florida to Tuskegee, which was a Division II school in Alabama. And that's where the former high school All-American's career ended. Number 9. The 9th best player in the country was actually Darrell Scott, who's a dude that I already made a video about. So for this spot, we will replace Darrell Scott with the best pocket passing quarterback, which is Dane Christ. In a class that featured Mike Glennon, Blaine Gabbert, EJ Manuel, and Andrew Luck, all guys who have started games in the NFL, Dane Christ was ranked higher than all of them. At 6'5", 230 pounds, scouts freaked over how he could zip the ball. His effortless throwing motion, his mobility, leadership, he was the very definition of a blue chip prospect. The kid from Notre Dame High School committed to, coincidentally, Notre Dame. He would end up being the backup quarterback for 2 years, and if it couldn't get any worse, he tore his ACL while playing during garbage time his sophomore season. After he received a medical red shirt, Christ was named the starter for the 2010 season. He did play reasonably well. That was until he ruptured his left patella tendon. He never really bounced back from this. After he recovered, he would be benched in favor of Tommy Rees. So after sitting the bench for the rest of that season, he would transfer to Kansas for his final year of eligibility. As the Jayhawks' main starter, Christ ranked dead last in Division 1A in QB rating, and Kansas won just one game. After going undrafted, he did receive a few invites to minicamps, but nothing ever materialized, and he never played in the NFL. Number 8. Around 2005, a kid who was a sophomore in high school was already the best player on his team talent-wise, but he didn't play a single down of football that year. His dad wouldn't allow him to play because his grades were so bad. He decided that after that season, things were going to change. He loved the game too much not to play. 2 years later, after improving his grades, he was the 2007 Defensive Player of the Year in all of America. That kid was Patrick Peterson. Coming out of Florida, early in the recruiting process, he had verbally committed to Miami. Later on, though, he did reopen his recruiting process and eventually chose LSU. He was so good that when he first arrived, he started as a true freshman, and 3 years later, Patrick was named the best defensive player in the country as a junior. During that season, he was the dark horse for the Heisman Trophy, drawing comparisons to Charles Woodson as a return guy and a game changer in multiple ways. Although he didn't win the Heisman, he was selected 5th in the NFL draft. Currently, he's one of the best in the league at what he does. A 3-time first-team All-Pro and 7-time Pro Bowler. Number 7. When Adrian Peterson played in college, he was one of the best running backs in the country. When he came out of high school, he was the number 1 running back in the nation, so you can definitely say that he lived up to the expectation. And after how good he was for Oklahoma, you better believe the Sooners were excited when they landed the number 1 running back again in 2008, Jeremy Calhoun. He was considered the best running back out of Texas since Adrian Peterson himself. When he suited up to play for the Sooners, people quickly realized he was no Adrian Peterson. In fact, he wasn't even close. Here's his stats from his 2 seasons at Oklahoma. And after the former 5-star recruit was beat out by a walk-on his sophomore year, the humbled Calhoun transferred to a much smaller school, Angelo State. That's where things ended for him. He never received any NFL interest. Number 6. The best linebacker in the country. Some considered him the best prospect out of Wichita since Barry Sanders. That was Arthur Brown. Arthur actually had a brother that was a year younger, who was considered the best running back in his class. Imagine going against that as an opposing team. Their defense has the best linebacker in the country, and then possibly the best running back on offense. They would become the first brothers ever to both be ranked 5-star recruits. Arthur decided to play at Miami, but it only lasted 2 seasons after it became clear that he, along with his brother, had received impermissible benefits from a booster. Arthur would end up transferring back home to play for Kansas State, where he quickly became the star of their defense. Possibly his most memorable play was against RG3 during his Heisman run. In 2012, Arthur Brown was named the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and this strong senior campaign would help him get drafted in the 2nd round of the 2013 NFL Draft by the Baltimore Ravens. His NFL career has been mostly disappointing. He had been mostly a backup through the 2016 season and is now currently a free agent. Number 5. Out of Summerville High School in South Carolina and ranked as the number 2 receiver, standing at 6'4", AJ Green possessed elite ball skills. He was so dominant, Sports Illustrated had done a special on him where they compared him to Randy Moss. He verbally committed to Georgia early in that process, and when he came in as a freshman, it was clear that he was going to be great. The dude led the SEC in receiving yards as a freshman. Even though he did get suspended 2 seasons later for selling his 2009 bowl game jersey, this didn't slow him down when he got back on the field. AJ decided to forego his senior season to enter the NFL Draft, where he would be selected 4th overall in the 2011 draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. And he has proven to be worth that pick, and has been a crucial part of the Bengals offense ever since. Number 4. I didn't mention him before when I talked about quarterbacks, cause this dude is in a class of his own. ESPN had him listed at 6'6", 227 pounds. He ran a 4.4 in high school and drew comparisons to Vince Young. That was Terrelle Pryor. The dude set multiple state records, including being the first to ever pass for 4,000 yards and rush for 4,000 yards in a career. Plus, his team averaged 54 points a game his senior year. He was one of the top recruits in basketball as well. He ranked higher on ESPN than Klay Thompson and Reggie Jackson. Going into Ohio State, the hype around this dude was insane. He did have a solid college career, and then in 2010, everything changed.
Jim Tressel has resigned at Ohio State amid the controversy over players selling memorabilia and Tressel's subsequent lying to NCAA investigators about those transgressions.
ESPN reported that Pryor made thousands of dollars autographing memorabilia for a local booster. And to keep a long story short, this infamous incident ended in Jim Tressel resigning as the head coach and Pryor deciding to leave Ohio State. He was later banned from all contact with the university's athletic program and wasn't allowed to talk to incoming recruits. After this all went down, Pryor entered the NFL supplemental draft, where he has carved out a very unique NFL career, one that started him as a quarterback and now has him as a receiver. Because of his successes though, Ohio State and Browns fans will always have a weird and confused relationship with Terrelle Pryor. Number 3. Coming out of New Jersey, the 6'3" Will Hill was the highest ranked safety in the nation. Will Hill has a very unique journey throughout his football career after high school. He did win a national championship while at Florida, but wasn't really a standout star during his time there. He would end up going undrafted in 2011 and signed with an Arena Football League team. He ultimately got a chance in 2014 when the Ravens needed a replacement for Aaron Ross, and he did take advantage of that moment. He earned himself an extended contract with Baltimore, mostly as a special teams guy, and unfortunately for me as a Browns fan, he's most famously known for this.
and it's blocked. It is picked up by Will Hill. Will Hill runs down the sideline. Hill's going to get a block. Will Hill is going to win the game on a blocked field goal.
But after a failed drug test in 2016, the Ravens released Will Hill, where he found his way into the Canadian Football League. Number 2. This was the number 1 wide receiver in high school. If you're wondering who could possibly be ranked higher than AJ Green, it's because it was Julio Jones, a freak athlete. He was voted Gatorade Athlete of the Year in track and field in Alabama. Along with his size, Julio Jones possessed world-class athleticism and decided to attend Alabama. In his first season, he was named SEC Freshman of the Year. As a sophomore, that was the beginning of the dynasty that is Alabama football, as they went on to win the national title. He really stood out statistically his junior year, and it was clear that he was ready for the NFL. In the 2011 NFL Draft, the Falcons made a blockbuster trade to go get Jones at number 6, and he has proven to be worth that pick. You could argue that Julio Jones is the best receiver in the league, and is well on his way to making the Hall of Fame. Number 1. The best player in the nation was a defensive end. We've seen this before with Jadeveon Clowney, and we all saw how that turned out. In 2008, the number 1 player in America was Quan Bowers. He was described as the closest thing to Reggie White and Bruce Smith. Both were Hall of Famers. His team would put him at running back just for fun. He committed to Clemson, where he would continue to dominate. As a junior, he was honored as ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Some mock drafts at the time had him possibly going number 1 in the 2011 NFL Draft, but things didn't turn out that way. Because of some red flags that had to do with medical issues, Bowers was a late second-round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He ended up playing 5 seasons with the Buccaneers, mostly as a backup. After that, he was out of the league. He is now currently playing in the Canadian Football League. After looking at all these dudes, most of them went on to the NFL, and about half of them have flourished there. It's just impressive to see how much these guys have accomplished in a decade, and it's gotta make you wonder where the guys coming out of high school now will be in 10 years.
It's nice to know that people are actually realizing the hard work I put in and how good I am.
He is a player, though, with talent that I think very few players in college have. From arm strength to athleticism